Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Sorry if I'm yelling in your ear. You might have to turn the volume down because I do yell a lot. Thank you for geeking out with me this morning. I know, waking up in the morning, hungover, like blockchain. It's gonna be fun. It's gonna be good. You guys ready? All right, let's get started. So I kind of figured today would be a fun way to really distill. I'm sure all of you are here because you're curious. You've heard of blockchain. I'm sure many of you are deep in it. So I've catered the content to kind of a group that generally understands what it is. There will be a primer just to kind of refresh your memory, clarify some misconceptions, talking about the specific areas of advertising that can be impacted, not just media. There will be a component around media buying and planning because this is really where my area is. But we will talk about everything from creative to data to loyalty, you name it. And then the surprise guest, which is kind of given away here, is we have Lucas Hearse, who's the Global Marketing Vice President of Consumer Connections at AB InBev. We actually yesterday announced the first mobile ad blockchain campaign. What does that actually mean? We'll explain, but that's now public. We're really excited about that, and we'll share with you that as well. So that literally just happened yesterday. So everything's happening in real time. And then we're going to talk a bit about the future. Not that we're already living in it, but the future. So let me give a bit of context as to, again, why as a business we decided to do this. So we've been around for 8 years. I kind of still call us a startup just to make sure the culture is still there, because you can get out of hand when you're not being the startup sort of scrappy mentality, so we love saying that still. But we're actually, to put it very simply, a mobile engagement platform in 11,000 apps. So we found this very small, simple insight, not small, it's actually a big insight, which is when you're doing something on your phone, that's when potentially there's a moment that is highly contextual that a brand could be a part of. So let's say you finish a run or you finish a workout. That's a verified behavior. That's something that actually indicates you're doing something related to fitness, right? And wouldn't it be awesome because you have the right moment in time and you have the right context, wouldn't it be awesome for a brand like a Reebok or a Nike to be there, right? So the idea is very simple. Behaviors are media. And we kind of created it as a way to engage consumers in a more relevant way, right? Advertising, as we know, has its issues. We can create the most beautiful, most amazing, most funny ads, but sometimes if it's shown at the wrong time, people may not care. So that's really what Keep is all about. And this is the moment. You can totally take pictures of this if you want. It's a simple formula. The event plus the context is the moment, right? We're trying to really introduce this, and I'm sure many of you have heard of moments-based marketing. We are credited with inventing that. Now you know where it came from. I'm kidding. Google kind of took it and made it their own. They call it micro moments. We just call it moments. So again, like I said, about 11,000 apps. You can see our progress as a company, and we've continued to grow. Now, blockchain. So the connection from Keep to blockchain is actually really simple. I had the epiphany late last year with our team where we were like, if Keep were to have been built in 2018, what technologies would we make sure are part of our foundation? And blockchain seemed quite obvious because you kind of look at the technology and it solves a lot of issues that the advertising space is seeing right now, which is, I'll put a few things in there and you'll see some more, but convoluted supply chain. You don't know where your dollar is going, especially when a brand is spending $1 to reach you. Basically, by the end of that chain, when it reaches you, it's poof, it's gone. And you don't know in the middle who's involved. So that transparency is key. It's also an ecosystem that lacks a lot of trust, right? So these are areas that we were like, listen, if we have this as our technology, it's really important. Now, again, just because we're doing blockchain doesn't mean that we're a blockchain company. I like to say to people, just because someone uses cloud, just because a company uses cloud doesn't mean they're a cloud company all of a sudden. They still have their core business. The technology is just something that's enabling them and helping them do business better. Our goal here is to make sure we do our best work and we serve our customers the best. And using the best technology is important. So that was our duty, and that's why we decided to go into it. I wanted to kind of give you a quick primer. As some of you may know, blockchain is heavily associated with Bitcoin because that's really where the first instance of the technology was introduced to the world. This paper, the Bitcoin paper, the original white paper, was released in 2008. So this is not a new technology, okay? It's 10 years old. But the whole point is, this is actually, if you are very curious about the roots and the history, it's actually really great to read this paper because it helps you understand kind of where it was born from. Now, what Satoshi came up with, the supposed inventor of Bitcoin, or maybe not really, it could be a group of people, but again, this is a mystery that we will never understand. We will never find out the background to, is that he wanted to use money, sort of sending money and currency transfer as the original use case for the technology. But really behind it is this idea of a ledger that is not changeable or immutable, right? That records how much of a balance you have and what amount has been sent to someone else, right? And a ledger that was stored in, potentially hundreds of thousands of computers and nodes, which are the decentralized component of it, which is what makes Bitcoin ultimately so secure. So this idea of the immutable ledger and the decentralization is really the core behind Bitcoin. But because it was about currency and money, people kind of made this misconception that it was all about that. So here are some misconceptions. Blockchain is not just about tokens and coins and weird, crazy shit you guys have seen, right? It's not that. There's a very, very, very cool technology behind all of it that helps that currency and token stuff work. But that's, again, not the same thing. It's not just about moving money around. Blockchain has applications across many industries. Think about land titles being recorded on the blockchain. Something, again, where you need a unique ID. Think about pharmaceuticals. Think about pretty much any shipping and logistics. Pretty much any industry that has a need to see something move along in a unique fashion, know where everything has been, has a lot of players in that marketplace, very much so a cool place to apply the technology. There is no the blockchain company. I've also had conversations where they're like, who is this blockchain company? There is no one blockchain. There are many blockchains that have been developed. Ethereum, obviously, is the most popular one. There's EOS. There's a lot of different sort of blockchain type technology. Stellar, you guys might have heard of Ripple. These are all different, very popular protocols, by the way. The overall sort of token economy today is about just shy of $260 billion. So it's not massive, but $260 billion is not a bad amount of money. Again, think of it as a foundational technology, and it is not legally complicated. When you introduce currencies, it does, because there are some rules in the US around FinCEN and the SEC that believes that some of these things may be securities. That's where it gets complicated. But the core ledger technology of blockchain is not something that should be deterring to you. And no, there are no drug dealers. Oh, there are drug dealers using Bitcoin, but again, drug dealers use cash too. We use cash, so are we all complicit? No. So key principles, as I kind of already discussed, there's a distributed ledger. It's just, when people ask me what is blockchain, I say it's chains of blocks. It really is the simplest way to describe it. It's chains of blocks of information that you basically use different sort of cryptographic or sort of cool math equations to decide which computer gets to write the next block of data next to each other. But it really is just writing a bunch of data into a ledger. Pretty simple. And it's, again, the same version of that ledger is then distributed across like thousands of computers. These are nodes, right? And that's really what's so cool about it is you cannot edit one ledger and then hack the whole system. There's no way to do it. Again, it has to have consensus, is why you hear about the word consensus all the time. Proof of work and proof of stake, again, I'm trying to keep it as simple as possible, which is the decision to write the next block, which computer gets to mint that next block in that blockchain, is used through two very popular types of sort of decisioning engines. Right now, there's proof of work, which is the Bitcoin model, which is which computer has the most computing power at that time, which is why you have people mining Bitcoins. You get it now? Again, this is why they have all these very powerful computers that are mining, because they want to be rewarded for being able to write that next block. And then stake is about resources, right? Which one has the most resources? So it's a bit of a different model, and the second one is a little bit more energy efficient, let's just say. That's why there's a lot of people with mining operations in like Iceland, because there's just so much hydroelectric power that it's cheaper than if you were to earn the Bitcoin by doing it. There's also, in Ethereum specifically, smart contracts. Now, smart contracts are really important. Smart contracts are essentially an automated contract that clears using rules that both parties have set automatically, right? So think of a sports bet, right? You bet on the game last night, right? Egypt versus Russia or whatever. Again, you would have said, I think that Egypt's going to win. I think that Russia's going to win. And again, in order to clear that bet, there needed to be a middleman, right? There needed to be someone to verify, obviously, that Russia won, and there would be money that changes hands. Now, the smart contract just essentially knows the data that the game was won by Russia, and the clearing of the money happens automatically through that contract. So here are some industries that, again, can be disrupted. Equity trading is the simplest and most easy way to describe this. When you buy a stock, right now you go through a broker, it's managed by a central exchange. This is not exactly that secure. The technology, sometimes you hear about the New York Stock Exchange going down like once a year. I mean, this is not exactly the most stable way to do stuff, and that's why there's a lot of talk now about what if, again, in the future, every single stock is now on the blockchain. Kind of crazy, right? Instead of buying a stock of Amazon, I could buy a token in Amazon. Pretty cool stuff. Copyrights, right? Again, you have an image you've created, right? You have a logo. Again, how do you enforce that copyright? Again, if unique IDs are minted, if there's again, there's ERC20, ERC728, which is their non-fungible tokens. You have the ability to apply different technologies to each item and essentially be able to track it all the way wherever it goes, and that's the beauty of copyright. Venture capital, again, no-brainer. Very inefficient system, right? You pitch VCs in these huge glamorous competitions. They don't really know what they're doing. They don't really know how they're deciding on things. They just make things up. I'm just kidding. But again, it's a bit complicated, but there's a way to make that marketplace more efficient. So again, key signs as to why blockchain may be appropriate is unnecessary middlemen, lack of trust between different parties in the ecosystem, very convoluted supply chain, and you need to track things. These are key principles that, again, you should be then considering blockchain as a technology to apply. So, especially this one. This is the industry we're in right now. I'm not even going to start. Some of you recognize all of this, right? You have the agency trading desk, you have the ad network, you have the ad server, the publisher ad server, DSP, SSP, ad network. I mean, this is like this whole thing here. We're just trying to get to that. It's this right now, but this is where we really, the advertiser and the publisher and then you. It really was supposed to be that elegant. But what happened? What happened was lack of trust. Now all of a sudden when I'm buying, I need a viewability guy. I need a tracker pixel from DFA. I need, some data layer to add in and stuff. I mean, it's just a lot of stuff in the middle because people just didn't trust each other, and you just needed to have efficiency in certain areas that may have been inefficient. But again, this is all what we've aimed for. So as I mentioned, I promised I would talk about not just media buying. There's a lot of different areas that can be disrupted by this in advertising. I'm assuming many of you are in the creative industries. Many of you have data in your businesses. Again, let's just start from the top real quick. Procurement, right? So when you're putting together a contract and you're trying to sign on a vendor, what if that contract is executed through smart contracts? What if all the different terms of your agreement are in-chain, and you also can then pay out using these smart contracts clearing out in real time? Reconciliation and billing, which we will talk about today. Big issue within advertising, because when a campaign delivers, 4 different companies have 4 different numbers, and it takes hours to clear these numbers. And also, let's just not skip this point, a lot of folks pay really slowly. And what if we can use the blockchain to as an intermediary? For example, there's some payment solutions that are out there right now saying, hey, would you take slightly discounted amount of money if you get paid today rather than paid in 100 days? Really cool solutions, again, all based on the blockchain. Digital asset management. A lot of us have millions of images that we're dealing with sometimes, or hundreds of thousands if you're at a big company, and you need to be able to manage where are all these pieces of creative going, who created what, how are we paying Getty, because I know a lot of you pay Getty, Again, how does that all work, right? And by the way, could Getty, eventually, I'm not trying to say they're not a value-added member of our ecosystem, but could there be a Getty-less future where the person who creates that image can directly sell it to you with security that is all governed by the blockchain? CRMs and CDPs, or customer relationship management and customer data platforms, we love acronyms. The idea is, again, each one of your customers has a unique identifier, and they, again, can be managed on-chain. So you know, again, a lot of folks, when you think about data, you have to understand each individual customer should be a unique record. One of the biggest issues in CRM and CDP is having multiple records of the same customer, right? So again, if everything is able to be remained unique, you have a lot of potential impact, just to save time, energy, and data cleanup issues. IP, as I mentioned, how do you know where your image is going and how to charge people and how to get your rights paid for? Again, all part of this. Loyalty, probably the most obvious, because right now, guess who manages the ledger on how many points you have with Marriott and with United and with Hyatt? They do. It's central. In fact, someone could go in there and go, and then all of a sudden you have all these more points. I mean, it's just not the safest way to do it. And then all of a sudden, I'm sure you guys have been hit with this before, where your airline's like, oh, just kidding. Now your points are worth half as much as they used to. Ta-da! So that again can be further managed by blockchain. So here is, it's a bit messy, but I will explain. This is what we are announcing with AB InBev today. So back when we were thinking about applications of blockchain, we realized that there was a lot of sort of talk of vaporware, and this is just a hype word, and I don't understand how this could be playing out in real life. And so we challenged ourselves to come up with a solution that could impact a very big chunk of the industry, has an immediate, obvious use case that was simple to understand. And this is the reconciliation and billing part. So right now, when an ad campaign is run today, as I mentioned, there's many different data points that people don't agree on. And most of the time, it's impressions delivered, because that's what we get paid on. So the SSP will have another number, the DSP will have another number, we'll have another number, the brand will pay on a certain number, and then the agency will decide on what obviously they'll pay on. That reconciliation process takes dozens of man-hours. So what we decided to do is create this product called Single Ledger. And Single Ledger is what it sounds like. It's one ledger where everyone writes their data to. Now, how do we reconcile in real time? Well, we all agree to the minimum discrepancies that are acceptable. So 5%, 10%, what are the rules? If it's more than 10%, we take the average. If it's less than 10%, we take the lower of the two numbers. Something like that. Again, these are rules that we all decide on. And at the end, it spits out a number that's the reconciled final number, and we save dozens of man-hours at the end of a campaign. So to be very clear, we decided to create a solution that, again, very obvious. We spent hours and hours trying to fix these issues around different numbers. Why don't we just use a trusted, neutral third party, meaning the blockchain? In this case, we're using the Ethereum network to be able to clear these things in real time. Sounds pretty magical, right? So that product now exists today. We plan to have it open source. Today it's within our ecosystem, and we're bringing in our parties, our partners like Rubicon, like AppNexus, and others to eventually share their data into the same chain. The campaign we're running with AB InBev is across like 5 different brands. So the main objective actually wasn't, oh, let's work with you because we want to do the blockchain thing. The main objective was we wanted to be able to create an engaging, relevant advertising campaign in mobile, but further accentuated and created through transparency with this solution. Oh, I should quickly add, all that data is then written in an encrypted fashion to Ethereum, so that and then AB InBev has their own public and private keys. So even if we go out of business or we disappear, which hopefully we don't, they actually get access to that data. It's fully transparent. They can access it whenever they want. So actually, this is the Stella campaign. This is another Stella, Joie de Bière. Again, this happened in music moments because we wanted to bring Stella closer to you when you're like listening to classical music, because very fancy. So again, to clear up, we're not actually our own app. There's no Keep app. We wanted to put this into thousands and thousands of apps. So here's some of the apps that we're working with. We believe that in-app is the future, or really in a high-attention environment like apps. And so this is some of the apps. Some of you may have seen, some of you may not have heard of. Pretty cool properties. And with that, this is a little small. Don't worry, I'll send it out. Our whole angle, like I said, is around moments. Lucas will share a bit more about the moments that they wanted to target, or really in their words, it's occasions. But this is our catalog of moments, or our periodic table of moments. As you can tell, we're very nerdy, but there's a lot of these that, of course, we've been really, really excited about as we work on these campaigns. And with that, I would like to introduce you to Lucas Hearse.
Thank you, Brian. So as Brian alluded to, I work for Anheuser-Busch InBev. We are the #1 beer company in the world. We have a big portfolio of brands. When they ask you what you do, I sell happiness, so we're a company that sells beer. So these are some of the brands that we have in the US, and we partner with Kip a few months ago to be able to help use the blockchain to help us leverage more transparency in the process that exists today in media, as Brian spoke about. So these are the brands that we did the campaign with. The campaign launched less than a month ago. Here you can already see some of the results. But the interesting thing here is we have a portfolio of brands, right? Not all brands are there for the same occasion. So in this case, you have Ultra is today the fastest growing brand in the US. It's an active lifestyle brand for more consumers above 35. So the moment there is about fitness. So then you have Bud Light, which is about social moment and sports. Then Budweiser, the moments is around food and sports. Stella Artois is more culture, and then Lime-A-Ritas is for music and for the weekend. So there you can see leveraging Kip's platform to be able to target ads in different moments, and then using blockchain technology to be able to get the results in a more transparent way. We now have access to anything that we would have gathered before, that we would need to rely on dashboards from a third party, and that they could tweak the results along the campaign if anything happened. Now that is very different. Now we go directly to the raw data. We can access this anytime we want. It is 100% transparent. We eliminate middleman, and this, we believe, is the future of what mobile advertising should be. We brought in-house programmatic. We buy our media for programmatic digital is all bought in-house globally. We started that last year, and this is simply one more step towards being more direct, being more transparent, trying to understand better how the ecosystem works, and making sure that every dollar we spend is spent in the best way, and that we know how it's performing in a fast and seamless way. So now I give it back to Brian. I'll be here available for any questions you might have, but I do believe, I have no doubt, that blockchain, it will change the advertising industry. Just to give you as an example, is Mark Zuckerberg announced a few months ago that he now has a person reporting to him focusing on blockchain, and that simply gives you an idea of what that will mean for the advertising world. So we are the first brand who has ever launched a mobile campaign, a mobile ad campaign using blockchain, but this is simply the beginning. You're going to see more and more in the coming months.
Thank you. Woo! All right. So I'm back. As you can see, some of the results so far are pretty awesome. At 8% engagement, that basically means someone engaged with the ad, which is putting their finger on the screen and tapping on something. So they watched a video or they clicked through to something. The viewability is actually supposed to be 100%, but this is a bit of an indicator of the viewability companies that are out there, and their way of measuring is that they use a consensus across their different technologies, which has a plus or minus error margin of usually 5 to 7%. So again, I'm not trying to say that we're the best, but these things happen. This is actually all of the data that's being written right now. So through the contract ID, you can actually see all the files that we're writing to the chain on an hourly basis. Now, a lot of you may have heard the criticism that the technologies are slow. It is true. Ethereum has a max load of like 2 transactions every 20 minutes. I'm kidding. No, it's just not that high. People claim that in programmatic you need hundreds of thousands of transactions per second. Now, let me explain to you why we decided not to do it in real time and that we didn't think it was necessary. Because transactions clearing in real time may be very necessary for something like, let's say you go to an ATM and you're pulling out cash. Pretty necessary for it to be real time, right? Because you need to know immediately the balance and if the guy has the money or the gal has the money, and then you take money out. In advertising, you don't need to clear it in real time. What we decided to do is write intermittently to the blockchain once an hour, but in the middle of it, write all the data to IPFS, which is the interplanetary file system that was developed by Filecoin, which is essentially, as nerdy as it sounds, a local chain-based storage solution. So that when we write to it, it's just like writing to the chain, but then you just upload the file once an hour. Pretty straightforward. And again, this is the interim solution. We're very early days. I always like to give the comparison that streaming technology, for example. Remember when we couldn't even like stream a song on Real Player, right? Like 15 years ago? Now we can stream high def on Hulu and Netflix, and their business models have entirely changed. And now you have the opportunity even to stream a desktop from thousands of miles away and basically have a high-powered computer with anything with a screen. So when you think about the opportunity of blockchain, it's early days, right? In the next 10 years, I'd actually say that the evolution might even be faster. In the next 5 years, you may even see more coming. As I said, it was announced yesterday. We have a cool Adweek article and a bunch of press about this, and we'll continue to bang that drum because this was really intended to be a kind of like, hey everybody, this is possible, there is a product available, we're leading the way, we want to make that future. A lot of people will sit around and ask, wait, what is this future, when is it going to arrive? We said, why don't we just build it, right? There is a second phase. I figured I would leave you guys with a little bit of a teaser. We are intending to create a token for media, and the reason is because it's a representation of value, which is what a token is. As goofy as it sounds when you hear random tokens like, you know, cheesecake token and gaze coin and yacht coin, the idea here is media, of course, is bought using currency today, but what if that currency itself had the terms of the contract of the media buy baked into it itself? That's the power behind this. And then at the end of the day, what if we can use it to reward the consumer? Which really goes back to the roots of advertising, is that we wanted to reward people. We want them to feel something. We want them to gain something. As an industry, we've taken a lot, and I think it's time for us to give. And that's a big piece of this. And again, I'm not going to go into too much detail because it's going to take too much time. This is a bit of the flow. Imagine people get rewarded with these tokens as they actually see the ad, which we think is very exciting, especially after Cambridge Analytica. A lot of people were going, wait a second, I feel like I'm being taken advantage of. I feel like I'm not getting anything in return. Well, you got Facebook for free, but that's besides the point. The idea is, how do we create an equation where the consumer feels ultimately like they're getting something in return? And the idea is very easy. What if they could use the tokens that are part of the ad buy to buy the very product that the brand was advertising in the first place? Kind of a no-brainer. So a lot of really cool stuff. So I have about a minute to share with you a vision of the future. This is more about business models. Today, a lot of the business models that exist because of the capitalist components and underpinnings of our whole economy is by transaction. You charge by transaction. We take a fee of every transaction. A lot of business models are based on that. Every time you spend, anytime money moves, like credit cards, like any marketplace, there's a fee that's taken out of it. The next question, though, is what about a decentralized world where the way you get paid isn't by transaction, but by the holdings of the overall tokens in the ecosystem? So let me quickly explain. In the future, I see a future where with Keep, we don't take a percentage of every transaction, we take 0. But as a marketplace creator, we are able to create that purity, right? That advertiser, publisher, consumer thing. We want to be able to create that marketplace essentially for free. We're saying these folks are going to connect with each other in a seamless fashion. But because they're using that token, and I have a holdings of that overall piece of the pie, So say I have 20% of the overall token holdings. As the ecosystem grows, the value of all the tokens grow, and thus my portion of the pie increases in value, and that's how I'm remunerated. Isn't that kind of mind-blowing? Like, it isn't now about feeing about everyone every single time a transaction happens. It aligns the incentives for me to want to grow the ecosystem, which at the end of the day, that's what I'm doing, is I'm building an ecosystem and creating an efficient marketplace. So that's just a little peek of the future. Here are the other thought starters. If you want to do something yourself and start a company, go for it. Tokenizing each individual. Imagine Facebook gives each individual a token. They are now a token, because your value can increase as you get more wealthy, as you have kids, as whatever. And that's really what then advertisers bid on, is they're bidding on the value of you. But imagine every single one of you is tokenized. Kind of cool. 100% of programmatic transactions executed on chain. So eventually that will happen. But again, because of the technologies is a little slower, we can do it in batches. Air miles and Tesco points in a box. So as I mentioned about the Marriott and Hyatt example, what if we could put a whole infrastructure of creating your own point system in a box? Again, very possible. All free ideas for you to start. Just make sure you tell me so I can maybe invest, you know? And then stamping each image produced in Photoshop with ERC 721, which is the non-fungible token, which essentially every time you save a PNG or a JPEG, immediately is tokenized, right? This really gets super exciting. So these are a lot of opportunities. The ecosystem is growing. There's a lot of companies now that are entering. I encourage you to check out some of these, because it is important for everyone to know about what's going on and share knowledge and not hold it close to the vest and be like this, but let's all grow together. Thank you very much.